actually want to ask you about this because I just thought about this as we were talking. So Sophia, you host studio for Bruins pre and post game coverage, and I think it's a little bit different, but I'm sure at first it's probably comparable. So with a new analyst coming in, right? When you're working with an analyst, you want to set them up for success, right? That's the
Right.
thing that you want to do as a pre and post game show host. You want to set them up for success. It takes time to develop chemistry. And obviously, with Lenny and guys who have been here a couple of years, with Jim Rice, who I've worked with since the start, who has been here for years, it took a while. It took a while because you get to know each other on and off the set, and you try to play to their strengths and set them up for success. So with Devin, I'm just getting to know him a little bit better. Now I know he was a middle infielder. I know when he played for the Red Sox. I know what he can speak to, but I don't know him as a person quite yet. So what are some of the challenges that you've experienced when you first jumped on the desk with maybe Jaffe or Barry or Razor and even Brick at times to try and play to their strengths and set them up the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's mostly knowing their cadence and how much they like to talk versus not, versus I don't really think about like the setups. I keep them as I would. I don't change them based on who I'm talking to, or I didn't at the beginning. Now I understand a little differently with Billy Jaffe, especially because he's the one constant on the desk. Like Razor and Barry Peterson will flip, and then obviously Brick sometimes when the playoffs past round two. That's the only time we'll really have Brick on the set. And Brick's, I wouldn't say challenging to work with. He's so good. But the only challenge is he doesn't like to have an IFB in his ear. So we
Right.
all have these for people watching or listening. We all have these pieces in our ears, headphones sort of that hides in your ear, where the producer can talk to you and you can hear sound and you can hear things behind the scenes that if you're watching on TV, you guys can't hear, but it's usually like direction. And Brick doesn't like wearing one of those, so he doesn't know where the direction is going. And he counts on you to tell him. And that the only challenge with that sometimes is that if we're counting down, if we only have 20 seconds left and he's in the middle of the thought, he doesn't know that. And there's no way I can really be like, you have 20 seconds in the middle of his thought. Whereas Razor and Billy will hear that and they'll wrap up. And Brick's such a pro that somehow he always nails it. Like he always nails it. I kind of give him the eye. I'm just like nodding with like wide eyes, like, yes. And he could kind of feel that, okay, it's time to wrap up. So that's the only one that's a bit different. But yeah, Razor and Billy are very different personalities. I just I try to be myself for the most part and how I would just talk to a friend. But of course, over the last 2 years, I think I've been doing this 3 years part-time or 2 years part-time, 1 year full-time of hosting. Especially this year, I learned like Billy, get out of his way, get out of his way. So he wants you to set him up as fast as you can, like shut up, set him up and let him go. So I did that at the beginning, but now I'm starting to like insert myself a little bit more and feel more comfortable. But I don't mind that. Like I like just like getting to the point with him and he takes it away. Razor, I feel like I can, and Barry, I feel like I can set up the topic a little more, like give it more context and more meat. And then they kind of play off that. Billy just likes it, like hand it to him like a fastball and he'll take it. So yeah, it's a
Yeah.
journey, but it's not something that like it's not something I think about before I go on the desk to answer your question. I'm not like, oh, who do I have today? And then I'm like, oh, I'll adjust how I do it. I just do it and maybe mid show kind of, get to my points quicker with Billy or something like that. But for the most part, I stay the same. Do you change it up? Like we might have different styles. Do you change how you broadcast?
Yeah, I do actually, and I think it's a little bit different. Bruins and Red Sox pre and post game. It's not apples to apples because we have more of a rotating cast on Red
Right.
Sox coverage than we do on Bruins coverage. You mentioned that Jaffe's there every single game. Razor and Barry are the only other two variables, right? So it's basically those three. With us, we have Jim, we have Lenny, we have Will Middlebrooks, we have Jonathan Papelbon, all of whom will rotate in and out and Devin Marrero now, all of who rotate in and out. And over the years, we've had other analysts, other former ball players on the desk. I mean, I can't tell you how many we've had
Mhm.
over the years. I mean, it's a long list of, and
For
it's
sure.
and it's just to sort of, keep things moving, and people move on for their own reasons or whatever. But I know that when I'm working with Jim, I'm going to concentrate on hitting, right? Like, hitting is what he does best, did best. Hitting is what he knows best. And he'll admit, he's like, I wasn't a pitcher, right? If I ever bring up something pitching wise, he'll say, well, I wasn't a pitcher, so I can't speak to this or that. But a way to sort of get him talking about pitching is to say, okay, Jim, as a hitter, how would you approach a guy like Brian Bayo, right? Because he throws A, B, C, and D. What are you waiting for? How do you do? And that's how I can get him to talk about pitching without actually talking about pitching, right? Because he's
Mhm,
talking it from a
mhm,
hitter's perspective. So I know that. But when it comes to Lenny, for instance, I know I can talk to him about pitching mechanics, right? So I
mhm,
can get into, for example, Tanner Houck pitched on Sunday for the Red Sox. He's had an outstanding year. Earlier this year, Lenny did a breakdown of how Houck had changed his pitching mechanics, right? So instead of being straight on, he kind of now is at a little bit of an angle, and that has changed things for the better for him. And that's just part of the reason for his success. But I know that Lenny did that breakdown, and I know that he can speak directly to the mechanics of Houck and other pitchers. And so it's great when we have, a pitcher and a hitter on the desk, because they can speak to those two different aspects of the game, and then at times, they bounce off of each other without me having to set them up, right? So it's not like, I have to say, all right, Lenny, as a pitcher, how do you approach it? And then, all right, Devin, as a hitter, how do you do it, right? Like, and it was great this weekend. Lenny, we talked about pitching, and then Devin had said, yeah, when I'm up and I'm down 0-2, this is how whatever the situation. So that's, I'm very cognizant of that, because I think that it really sort of sets the show up for success. It gives it good flow, good content, all of those things. And honestly, that's something that took time, man. Like, I mean, I came from a news background where I would be, anchoring or reporting in local news or doing local sports or whatever. I had never hosted shows with analysts who had played the
right.
game. I've done interview segments, plenty of those over the years, but I came to Nesson never having done a pre and post game show before. So at first I was very rigid, and I was sort of like, okay, here's the play. What do you think about it? Okay, here's the next play. What do you think about it? And that took time to sort of develop it took time to get comfortable, and it took time. You mentioned earlier, you just try to be yourself. For me, that took a
Right.
little bit of time, for a number of
Right.
reasons. One, never having done pre and post, and two, trying to get comfortable with the analyst. So it's such a process, and that's why Tom Karen, who's been doing it for a long time, has mastered the art of it. I feel like over the years I've gotten more comfortable and have been more myself, and have really been comfortable with that. But I think it does. It takes a while to get comfortable with that. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think I'll probably get better as like the years go on, because my first few thoughts was just like, don't first few years, not first few thoughts, the first few reps, I guess, which took a couple years, was just like, don't stir the pot, just do a good job, set Billy up, set Razor up, set Barry up, and set Brick up right. Get the promos right, get the counts right, get your stats right. So for sure, that's like all you're thinking. But I do have a more playful personality than a more newsy one. And I used to do hard news as well, like yourself, right? For in Canada for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation on a very serious news channel. So I know how to play that part too. But like if you're really hanging out with me, it's very silly, and it's very teasy and sarcastic. And so I think this is the first year that I've actually been able to bring that into the broadcast, which I like doing. And I would say I want to backtrack though a little bit Obviously, Razor being the goaltender, yes, I cater to his strengths for sure when it comes to goaltending. I'm asking Billy about it, but it's always Razor first or Razor's thoughts, and then we kind of break it down with Billy. But it is cool to have specific positions on the panel that you can kind of cater to. And Razor's goaltending insight is unbelievable. Like I learn something every time I work with him. I'm like, damn, I didn't think about that, or I didn't know that. So that you obviously cater to that. But when it comes to, yeah, I think I'm going to become myself more and more. You get chemistry with these guys. You're a little bit more comfortable trying something. Sometimes you try something off the cuff and maybe it doesn't land. And if I were to do that in the first 6 months of doing this job, I probably would be rattled about their reaction. They might be like, don't do that again, or we didn't like that. But they've gotten used to me. They know me. They trust me. So it's easier to take risks because if they work, awesome. If they don't, it's not that big of a deal. They're not like upset because they know you, they trust you, and they trust that you're trying for the best of the show, like not for yourself. And I think it's just comfort too. Like I'm very comfortable with Sean and John, our producers who are in our ears. I'm comfortable with how they count, how they set me up. And so with the comfort of the material, I can kind of, my style is to like sit back and it be like a relaxed kind of conversation, not that broadcasty, not that newsy. So when you are actually comfortable, you're able to kind of have that vibe. Sometimes that bites me in the butt. Sometimes I watch shows or segments back and I'm like, I was a little too casual, or I feel like it was too, and I'm not trying to be. I'm just like, I'm just going to be myself as this, if I'm talking to my friends, and I'm like, I could have given that more. So I'm definitely still figuring out my style.